Moonlight had always been pale in Arendor, never reaching the deepest corners of the forest or the high towers of the castle. It was a kingdom ruled by shadow and steel, where whispers carried faster than swords, and secrets were safer behind walls than in the open. Tonight the streets were quieter than usual, the air heavy with anticipation, for a stranger had arrived at the castle gates. The stranger was a woman, her face hidden behind a thin veil that shimmered silver under the torchlight. She moved with a grace that seemed unnatural, as if the ground itself bent away to let her pass. Nobles and servants alike stopped to stare, unsure whether to fear or admire her. Rumors already ran ahead of her, stories of silver eyes that could see into the soul, that could charm beasts and men alike, that could carry a curse so terrible no one dared to meet her gaze. Her name was Alara. She did not care for the gossip or the stares. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her steps deliberate, her hands calm. She had learned long ago that hiding was safer than trusting. Her silver eyes, though hidden behind the veil, were both her gift and her burden. They held a power she had barely begun to understand, and a curse she feared could destroy anyone who looked too long. The castle guards hesitated when she reached the gates, unsure what to do with someone so mysterious. She did not offer explanations. Her presence alone seemed to challenge authority, yet she carried no weapon. She was a puzzle in motion, and the guards, trained in obedience, felt uneasy. Inside the great hall, the Alpha King of Arendor, Kalen, sat on his throne. His eyes were as dark as midnight, sharp and commanding, a king who had never tolerated disobedience. He had heard of the stranger, of course. The rumors traveled fast, even to him, but he had not expected her to arrive alone, unannounced, daring to step into his court. Kalen leaned forward slightly, resting his chin on his hand, his gaze sweeping the hall. When it fell on her, the air seemed to shift. There was something in her presence that tugged at him, a mixture of challenge and allure that he could not ignore. She was not like the nobles, not like the courtiers who whispered and bowed. She was something wild, untamed, and dangerous. Alara moved with deliberate calm. She knelt before the throne, bowing her head but keeping her body steady. Her veil did not hide the confidence in her posture. When Kalen spoke, his voice was low and sharp. "Who are you?" he asked. Her voice was soft, but it carried strength. "I am called Alara, Your Majesty. I come seeking refuge, and perhaps guidance." The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. Guidance from a stranger with silver eyes. It sounded like a jest or a trap. Kalen, however, leaned back slightly, studying her. "And why should I offer either?" he asked. "Your kind are often dangerous. Your eyes are said to carry power and a curse." Alara did not flinch. "I know of the curse, Your Majesty, and I know of the dangers. I seek only to use my gift for something greater than myself, if the opportunity is given." Kalen's eyes narrowed. He had never seen anyone approach him with such calm honesty. Most people in his court either fawned or plotted. Few spoke of their own power or curse without fear. "You will stay in the castle," he said finally. "But be warned, any sign of deceit, and you will answer for it. Do you understand?" "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. The courtiers muttered among themselves. Some whispered of fear, others of fascination, but Kalen only watched Alara, sensing a tension beneath her calm. He could not yet see the full measure of her power, but he felt its presence like a shadow in the corner of his mind. Days passed, and Alara began her cautious steps into the rhythm of the castle. She observed the guards, the courtiers, and the servants with quiet attention, learning the unspoken rules of the court. She never revealed her eyes, always keeping the veil in place even when alone. It was not just safety, it was control. Kalen found himself thinking of her more often than he expected. He tried to ignore it, reminding himself that no one could be trusted, that power was dangerous. Yet when she walked through the hall, even briefly, the air seemed to change. Courtiers noticed the way he watched, silently, as if measuring her every move. One evening, as the moon rose high over Arendor, a messenger arrived at the castle with urgent news. A shadowed figure had been spotted near the outer walls, moving with unnatural speed, leaving a trail of fear among the villagers. Some claimed it was a wolf, larger than any known, with eyes that glowed like fire. Others said it was worse, a being that had stepped out of a storybook of horrors, drawn to the castle for reasons unknown. Kaelin's dark eyes narrowed. "Ilara," he said, summoning her to his private chamber. She entered without hesitation, bowing slightly. "You have heard the reports," he said, his tone unreadable. "Do you know anything of this shadow?" Ilara lifted her veil slightly, enough for a sliver of silver to catch the candlelight. "I may know, and I may be able to stop it." Kaelin leaned forward, his expression both intrigued and cautious. "You may?" "Yes," she said. "But if I reveal my power, it cannot be undone. My eyes, they are not just for seeing. They draw out truths, fears, and desires. They can protect, or they can harm." Kaelin studied her for a long moment. He had ruled this kingdom through strength, not through the unseen, not through magic. And yet, something about her words stirred a curiosity he could not dismiss. "Then show me," he said finally. "Show me what you can do." Ilara hesitated, then lowered her veil completely, revealing her silver eyes. The room seemed to darken and glow at the same time, as if the candles flickered under their own power. Kaelin felt a shiver run down his spine. He saw not just her eyes, but shadows of memories and desires, fears and regrets, all swirling together in a storm he could barely comprehend. The shadow at the gates paused as if sensing her power. In a sudden quiet moment, it vanished, leaving only the lingering tension of fear and awe. Kaelin stepped closer to her, heart racing, yet his mind tried to maintain command. "You hide much," he said, his voice low. "Your power, your past, your heart. Why?" Ilara lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. "Because if I reveal all, I risk losing everything, even myself." Kaelin felt the weight of her words, heavier than any sword. He realized that she was not merely a stranger or a sorceress. She was someone who carried the burden of exile, of fear, and of power beyond understanding. And yet, there was something in her courage, in her control, that drew him in, dangerously close. As the night deepened, the moonlight caught the edge of her silver veil, glimmering like starlight. Kaelin could not look away. A tension hung between them, unspoken, yet palpable. He knew that revealing her eyes was a risk. She knew it too. But neither could deny the force drawing them together, like two currents destined to collide. And then, from the shadows of the corridor outside, a whisper reached the hall, a voice chilling and low carried through the stone walls. "The silver-eyed one cannot remain hidden forever, nor can she escape what is coming." Ilara stiffened. Kaelin's hand went to the hilt of his sword, but he did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on hers, understanding that their fates had shifted the moment the veil fell. The court would see only the stranger and the king, but in truth, something far older and darker had begun to stir. A bond, a danger, and a desire that neither could yet control. And in that silent, silver-lit moment, both knew that nothing would ever be the same. The days after the veil was torn away were heavy with silence, broken only by the distant echoes of the castle halls. Ilara moved carefully through the corridors, her silver eyes now fully revealed, shimmering with an unearthly light that drew both awe and unease. She could feel Kaelin's gaze on her constantly, and though it unsettled her, it was not entirely unwelcome. Kalen, the Alpha King, was a man who commanded obedience with a glance. Yet now, in the quiet of his private chambers, he studied her with an intensity that unsettled even his seasoned court advisors. He had seen power before, but this was different. It was not just strength. It was a presence that seemed to ripple through the very air, stirring something deep inside him. "Ilara," he said one evening, his voice calm but firm. "Your eyes. They are unlike anything I have known. Do you understand what you carry?" She looked down, pressing her fingers to the veil that now lay folded in her hands. "I do," she said softly. "They are both a gift and a curse. I was taught to hide them, to protect myself and others. The moment they are seen, everything changes." Kalen leaned back, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "Everything changes," he repeated, his voice low. "I saw it the night the veil fell. I saw shadows, fears, and truths I do not fully understand, and yet I cannot look away." Ilara's heart skipped. She had always known that revealing her eyes was dangerous, but she had never imagined it would stir such fascination and something deeper in him. "You must understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "that what you saw is only a glimpse. My eyes reveal what lies within, what is hidden, and sometimes they demand a price few can bear." Kalen stood abruptly, pacing the chamber. "I do not fear death, Ilara. I do not fear curses or shadows. But you, I do not know if I can control what you show me. Can you?" She met his gaze, unwavering. "I can. Sometimes, but only if I trust the person. And trust is not given lightly." A silence fell between them, thick and charged. The castle outside seemed to hold its breath. Ilara felt the pull of something she could not name, a connection, fragile and yet undeniable. Kalen's presence pressed against her like a storm she could not resist. Days turned into nights, and the court grew restless. Rumors of the silver-eyed woman spread like wildfire, drawing both curiosity and envy. Some courtiers whispered of her as a sorceress, others as a spy, and a few dared call her a threat to the king himself. But Kalen, unshaken by the whispers, insisted she remain close to the throne. Ilara noticed how he watched her, not as a king watches a subject, but as a man trying to understand a force he cannot control. It was both unsettling and intoxicating. One evening, as the moon cast long shadows across the castle gardens, Kalen summoned her to walk with him. The night was quiet, the air carrying the scent of jasmine and wet stone. "You have not spoken of the curse," Kalen said, his voice low. "Tell me, why must your eyes hide truths? What happens to those who meet them?" Ilara hesitated. "It is not always death, but it can feel like it. The eyes draw out the deepest parts of a person. The fears, the regrets, the desires they hide even from themselves. Some cannot withstand it. Some lose themselves completely." Kalen listened, his hands clasped behind his back. "And yet you wear them openly now, in my presence. Why?" "Because," she said, looking at him, "I am beginning to trust you, and because hiding no longer feels like protection, it feels like running." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The moonlight reflected off his dark eyes, sharp and commanding, yet softened by the intensity of his focus. "Do you know what that means?" he asked. "You are not only revealing yourself, you are giving me a part of your soul, a part that is dangerous and fragile. And I do not know if I can bear it." Ilara's silver eyes met his, unwavering. "You may not be able to, that is the risk, but if you cannot bear it, you will know. And if you can, perhaps we can face it together." For a long moment, neither spoke. The night held them in a fragile stillness, a quiet tension that neither could break. And then, from the shadows of the trees, a movement caught their attention. A figure, cloaked in darkness, watched them from the edge of the garden. Its presence was unnatural, silent, yet heavy with menace. Kalen's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sword, while Alara's eyes glimmered, silver light spilling from beneath her veilless face. "It is coming," she whispered, almost to herself. Kalen stepped closer, his gaze sharp. "What is coming?" "The part of my past I tried to bury," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "The part that knows my power and wants it for itself." The shadow moved closer, and Alara's eyes flared briefly, silver against the night. The air seemed to hum with energy, as if the world itself responded to her presence. Kalen felt the pull, the strange mixture of fear and desire that he could not name. "You must trust me," she said, her voice firm. "If you step back, it may not survive, and neither will you." Kalen did not hesitate. He drew his sword, stepping between her and the approaching shadow. "I trust you," he said, though his heart raced. "And I will not step back." The figure halted, its form flickering like smoke in the torchlight. Then, as if sensing her courage, it vanished into the night, leaving only the echo of a warning. Alara exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "This is only the beginning," she said. "There are others who know of my eyes, others who will come for what I hold. You must be ready." Kalen sheathed his sword, his eyes never leaving hers. "I am always ready," he said, though a part of him knew that this threat was unlike any he had faced before. Over the following days, the court noticed a change in their dynamic. Kalen no longer merely observed Alara. He consulted her, sought her counsel, and sometimes watched her in moments of quiet when her guard was lowered. Alara, for her part, began to feel something she had never allowed herself, the stirrings of trust, and perhaps even a fragile bond with the king who had dared to meet her eyes. Yet the whispers continued. Courtiers murmured of danger and intrigue, of power too great to control. And in the shadows, unknown to them both, forces stirred. Ancient ones who had awaited the awakening of silver eyes, whose intent was dark and unforgiving. Alara knew that the veil she had worn was gone, but the protection it had offered was lost as well. She felt exposed, vulnerable, yet stronger than she had been in years. And Kalen felt the pull of something he had never felt before, a connection that defied reason, bound by neither crown nor kingdom. One night, as the moon bathed the castle in silver light, Kalen approached her private chamber. He did not knock. He did not ask. He merely stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Alara," he said softly, "I cannot ignore this bond between us. Your eyes, they have seen into me, and I cannot turn away." Her breath caught. She had always feared this moment, the one where someone would truly see her and not falter, and yet she felt a strange warmth, a promise of protection, even from the man whose presence had once intimidated her. "You are not like others," she said. "Most would flee or fall to fear. You stand." "And yet," he replied, "I do not fully understand. I only know that I cannot leave, that whatever comes, we face it together." A silence settled, heavy with unspoken truths. Alara's silver eyes shimmered, reflecting the firelight. She knew that revealing herself fully was only the first step. The dangers were far from over, but in that moment, for the first time in many years, she felt a flicker of hope, a flicker that could grow into something far stronger. The castle was never quiet for long. Even in the dead of night, whispers slithered through the corridors like restless spirits. Ilara had begun to understand that her presence brought more than fascination. It brought fear, envy, and attention she could neither avoid nor fully control. Since the veil had fallen, Kaelin's eyes followed her every step. He had always been a king who commanded respect through strength and strategy, yet with her, his control faltered. He did not know why, and he did not try to analyze it. He simply felt the pull, the invisible thread that drew him to her, fierce and unrelenting. "Ilara," Kaelin said one morning, his voice low and firm, "you have remained distant from the court, but the nobles grow restless. They watch every movement. They whisper. Do you not fear their suspicion?" Ilara's silver eyes glimmered under the torchlight. "I have learned to move like a shadow, Your Majesty, to be seen but not understood. Suspicion is inevitable. What matters is how we respond to it." Kaelin studied her, impressed by her composure. Most people would have been afraid. Most would have faltered under the weight of the court's scrutiny. But she moved with purpose, even in a place where power was measured in whispers and daggers. "You are not like others," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. "Most would have hidden completely or been destroyed by the attention. I have survived because I must," Ilara replied. Her voice was calm, but beneath it ran a tension that only Kaelin could sense. "The veil kept me safe, but it also kept me small. Now, without it, I am stronger but more exposed, more vulnerable." Kaelin's dark eyes softened, a rare expression in the king who rarely showed emotion. "Vulnerability can be strength if you trust the right people. And He paused, unsure of the words. "I do not intend to let you face this alone." Their connection, fragile and electric, had begun to change the rhythms of the castle. Guards who once ignored her now bowed with caution. Courtiers whispered behind closed doors. Even the servants noticed the silent, charged tension between the king and the silver-eyed woman. But power draws attention, and attention often brings danger. It happened first in the gardens. A group of nobles, bitter over their perceived loss of influence, sought to undermine her. They whispered poison into ears that were not always loyal, hoping to sow distrust between the king and his mysterious companion. Ilara felt it immediately, the cold sting of envy, the sharp edges of fear, and she knew the danger was growing. Kaelin had anticipated their moves, though he did not fully understand how. He had begun to rely on Ilara's insight, her ability to see what others could not, and yet, even with their combined awareness, the threat pressed closer. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the castle walls, the nobles attempted a bold move. They brought a cage into the courtyard, containing a strange, unnatural creature, its eyes glowing with a malice that made even the bravest guards falter. Kaelin and Ilara arrived just in time. The air thrummed with tension, and the creature hissed, sensing her power immediately. Its gaze fell on her, sharp and calculating, as if it recognized her silver eyes. Ilara stepped forward, lifting her chin and letting her full power flare briefly. The creature recoiled, its body trembling under the force of her gaze. The silver light in her eyes spread like ripples across water, revealing not only the truth of the creature's fear, but also the corruption that had summoned it. Kaelin watched, a mixture of awe and concern tightening his chest. "You control it," he said softly, almost in disbelief. "I can," she replied, her voice steady. "But it is not simple. My power demands focus. It is not only about control, it is about understanding the fear, the desire, and the hidden truths within all things. One mistake." Her eyes flickered with silver fire. "And it could turn against everything." Kaelin stepped closer, his presence a steady anchor. "Then let me help you." Her eyes softened, briefly revealing the vulnerability she rarely allowed. "You do not understand what you ask. If you are affected by my eyes, you may see parts of yourself you cannot undo. Are you prepared for that?" He did not hesitate. "I am prepared. If I am to protect this kingdom, and you, I will face it. Whatever comes." Ilara studied him, searching for hesitation. She found none. In that moment, a bond began to form. Not just of trust, but of something deeper, something neither could yet name. She let her gaze flow fully into his, and for a brief electric moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The creature, sensing defeat, shrank back into the cage. The nobles who had tried to orchestrate the challenge now bowed in fear and awe, realizing that her power, and the king's acceptance of it, was beyond their understanding. Kalen's hand brushed against hers, almost unintentionally. A spark traveled between them, subtle but undeniable. Ilara's heart beat faster, but she did not pull away. Instead, she realized that her silver eyes, once a barrier, were now a bridge, connecting them in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Days turned into weeks. The threat of the court's envy lingered, but Kalen and Ilara learned to navigate it together. They trained, they planned, and they explored the boundaries of her power. Each encounter strengthened not only their bond, but also their awareness of the dangers lurking beyond the castle walls. One night, under the full moon, Kalen brought her to the edge of the cliffs overlooking Arendor. The wind whipped around them, cold and wild, carrying the scent of the sea. "Do you ever fear losing control?" he asked quietly, his dark eyes fixed on hers. "Every day," she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. "My power is not just a gift. It is a responsibility, and one mistake, one lapse, could destroy more than just me." Kalen reached out, resting his hand lightly on hers. "Then let me stand beside you. Let me share that responsibility. You are not alone." Her silver eyes glimmered with emotion she rarely revealed. "I want to believe that," she said softly. "But trust is fragile. It is earned and tested." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Then test me," he said simply. "Push me, and if I fail, then you will know." "But if I do not, if you do not," she said, finishing his thought, "perhaps we can face anything together." The wind howled around them, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. Ilara's silver eyes shimmered with both power and vulnerability, reflecting the moonlight like liquid silver. Kalen's hand tightened slightly over hers, a silent promise, and then from the shadows below the cliffs, a whisper echoed, low, cold, and unmistakably dangerous. "The silver-eyed one grows stronger, but her bond will bring ruin to those who oppose her, and to those who love her." Ilara stiffened, her eyes narrowing. Kalen stepped closer, protective yet tense. They both knew that the forces waiting in the shadows were more patient, more cunning, and far older than anything they had yet faced. "The danger comes closer," she said, her voice steady but firm. "And soon, nothing will remain hidden. Not the truth of my eyes, not the truth of us, not the threat in the shadows." Kalen's dark gaze softened as he looked at her. "Then we face it together," he said, his voice unwavering. "No matter what comes." The night held them in quiet tension, two figures bound by power, trust, and the fragile beginnings of something neither dared to name aloud. And though the castle slept, the world beyond was already stirring, ready to test the strength of their bond and the depth of their courage. The silver moonlight danced on Ilara's eyes, reflecting not only her power, but the promise of what was to come. A promise that was both terrifying and irresistible. The castle of Arendor had never been so silent. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath as the moon climbed high into the sky, casting silver light across the stone courtyards. Ilara and Kaelin stood on the highest balcony, overlooking the kingdom, the wind whipping around them as if carrying a warning from the world beyond. "The shadow grows stronger," Ilara said softly, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight like twin mirrors. "It has been waiting. For me, for us. Soon it will test everything." Kaelin's dark eyes did not leave hers. He stepped closer, letting the wind sweep his cloak behind him. "Then we face it together. No matter what comes, we will not falter." Ilara hesitated for only a moment before she allowed herself to fully trust him. This trust was different from the cautious alliances she had formed in the past. This was a bond forged not of fear or strategy, but of understanding and shared purpose. The moment was fragile, yet powerful, as if the world itself had paused to witness it. "The danger is not only outside the castle," she said. "There are those who fear me, who will try to control or destroy me. They do not understand the power of silver eyes, and they will pay for their ignorance." Kaelin reached for her hand, taking it firmly in his own. "Then they will face us both. Your power is mine to protect, as mine is yours to trust. Together we are stronger than any shadow, any threat." For the first time since she arrived at the castle, Ilara allowed herself to feel the strength of their unity. Her heart, once heavy with fear and solitude, now beat with a rhythm she had almost forgotten: hope. That night, the threat revealed itself. From the darkness beyond the castle gates, a force unlike any they had faced approached. It moved with deliberate precision, a swirling mass of shadow and malice that seemed almost alive. Ilara's eyes glimmered, silver light spilling outward, illuminating the courtyard and the walls in a spectral glow. Kaelin drew his sword, the steel catching the moonlight. "Stay behind me if necessary," he said, though he knew neither of them could be hidden. "I will not hide," Ilara replied firmly. "I am part of this fight, and so are you." As the shadow approached, Ilara's power flared. Her eyes glowed brighter, revealing the truth of the darkness before them. It was no ordinary threat. This shadow carried fragments of the fears, regrets, and hidden desires of all who had opposed her. It twisted and writhed, feeding on the whispers of the castle, the envy of nobles, and the old grudges that had lingered for decades. Kaelin moved beside her, his presence steadying her. "You control it," he said softly, his voice carrying reassurance. "I can, but only if you trust me," she replied. Her silver eyes met his, drawing courage from the unwavering determination in his dark gaze. "Trust me completely." Kaelin nodded. "I do. All of me." With that, Ilara stepped forward, letting her power flow fully. The silver light from her eyes surged outward, rippling across the courtyard. The shadow shrieked, recoiling against the purity and intensity of her gaze. Pieces of its darkness were torn away, leaving only fragments behind. Kaelin moved through the remaining shadows with her, his sword cutting through threats with precision. The shadow hissed and twisted. But each attempt to strike them was met with the combined strength of their bond, her power, his skill, their unity. As the battle raged, Ilara felt her eyes strain under the weight of controlling the darkness. Every fragment carried memories and fears, each demanding recognition and resolution. She felt herself being pulled toward exhaustion, toward the brink of collapse. Kaelin sensed her struggle and grasped her hand firmly, anchoring her to the present. "Do not falter," he said, voice strong and commanding. "I am with you. We face this together." Her silver eyes shone brighter than ever, illuminating the courtyard like twin moons. She drew the shadows toward her, unraveling their twisted forms, purifying the malice they carried. The darkness hissed, resisted, but it could not overcome the force of two hearts aligned in purpose and trust. And then, in the final surge of light, the shadow dissolved completely, leaving only the echo of its warning. The silver-eyed one cannot be hidden, and those who love her will pay a price. Elara collapsed to her knees, exhausted but alive. Kalen knelt beside her, lifting her gently. "You are safe," he said, his dark eyes filled with both relief and admiration. "We have won together." She looked up at him, silver eyes shimmering with both tears and triumph. "I could not have done it alone," she whispered. "You never will," he said softly. "Not now, not ever." For the first time, Elara allowed herself to believe that she had a place in this kingdom, not as a threat, not as a stranger, but as someone powerful, respected, and perhaps even loved. The dawn came slowly, painting the castle walls in soft gold. The threat was gone, the shadows dissipated, and the court, once filled with suspicion and envy, now regarded her with cautious respect. Kalen stood beside her, a silent guardian as she walked through the halls, no longer veiled, no longer hidden. Yet even in the light of day, the bond between them remained unbroken. It was a bond forged in trust, tested in battle, and strengthened in the quiet moments between danger and victory. Their hands brushed as they walked together, and the simple contact carried more meaning than any words could convey. "Elara," Kalen said, as they reached the balcony overlooking the kingdom, "you have not only faced the shadows, you have shown the strength within yourself. The kingdom sees it now, and I have seen it all along." Her silver eyes met his, filled with emotion she had rarely revealed. "And you," she said softly, "have shown me that trust is possible, even for someone like me." He took her hand fully in his, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "We are stronger together. Your power, your courage, it belongs to you and to this kingdom. And I am yours to share it with." A breeze swept through the balcony, carrying with it the scent of the sea and the mountains beyond. The castle was alive with possibility. The shadows of the past dissipated, leaving only the promise of a future they could face together. Elara's silver eyes shimmered with tears, not of fear or sorrow, but of relief and hope. For the first time in years, she felt whole, not hidden, not veiled, but truly seen. And beside her, Kalen's presence was a steady, unwavering force, a reminder that she would never face the world alone again. The whispers of the shadows were gone for now, but she knew that her journey was not over. The silver eyes were a gift, a responsibility, and a bond that would continue to shape her path. And with Kalen by her side, she felt ready for whatever came next. They stood together on the balcony, watching the sun rise over Arendor. Her silver eyes reflected the light of dawn, and in them, Kalen saw not just power, but the promise of love, trust, and redemption. "Elara," he whispered, "the veil is gone, and so are the fears that kept you from being yourself. Whatever comes, we face it together, always." Her silver eyes glimmered with a quiet smile. "Always," she echoed. And as the kingdom awoke beneath the golden light, the two of them stood side by side, united not only by battle and destiny, but by a bond stronger than any curse, deeper than any shadow, and brighter than any silver moon. For in the covenant of their trust and power, they had found not only victory, but a love that would endure, shining like silver in the darkest of nights.